Vern Harnish, as we all know, the birthing of giants, is one of the best guys I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, and I was privileged to be at his first conference, and I spoke way back then. So I am an entrepreneur. I love what I do. I've been doing it now for at least 73 years. I'm 84 years old. Normally I get about 6 hours to speak, but tonight they just gave me an hour and a half, and I figured, well, when you're 84, you have a lot of stories to tell, and therefore you need the 6 hours. But tonight they honored me with being 21, so I'll only speak for an hour and a half. You're so lucky. What am I all about? Well, my mother and father came to this country in 1920 when they heard that the streets in America were lined with gold. Several years later, as you all know, the 1930 Depression hit, and people were selling gum strips, pencils, and apples. Really a tough time. My dad used to work in a shoe factory, and he got laid off. It was really tough times. I lived in the south end of Boston. In those days, the area was broken up with South Boston primarily being Irish. In the area of the south end, there was the Greeks, the Lebanese, the Syrians. You also had the Jewish community. It was a boiling point, just mass amount of different languages. And in those days, people would sit on the stoops, because all of those houses are 5 stories high. And you'd walk down the street and there'd be people sitting on the stoops talking in different languages. It was just an amazing period to grow up in. My father one day said to me, "Would you like me to make you a shine box so you could shine some shoes?" So I said, "Look, I love it." So he made this gorgeous little, I still have it to this day, and I would go up on Tremont and Dartmouth Street and hustle the guys coming out of bars because they had to go to Mass on Sunday. So and I was able to really get to them and give them a real good shine. And I eventually learned the technique was called the hustle. When the shine was for 5 cents, 10 cents maybe, so they'd give me a quarter. So I had this technique of searching for the change, hoping that the guy would get nervous enough to say, "Keep the change." And it worked so well that I made more money on the tip than I made on the shine. It's called the hustle. We all have to hustle in life, right? I'd bring $2 home to my mother. I'd give it to her. She would say, "Thank you," and this, and praise me for going out. One day, a couple of my buddies asked me how much money I was making. And I told them, now this is 1937, 38. A quarter, half a dollar, a lot of money. And I said, "Well, I'm shining these shoes. Would you get your father to make me a shine box too?" Well, the long story short, we ended up making 15 shine boxes. I didn't know I was franchising then, even in those early days. But it was nice to put people into business, and I got a lot of credit for doing that. Then I found out that the Boston Record American, the newspaper, you could make some money selling newspapers. And on the corner of Tremont and Dover Street, it was the Bowery then, this orange truck would come with stacks and stacks of newspapers, and it'd be about 17, 18 kids waiting to get their share of newspapers. So you'd get a stack, and they'd all be standing there for the truck to come. And what did they do? they left from Dover Street and went towards Dartmouth Street, hitting all the bars. And I said to myself, some of these guys are bigger than me, and I don't want to be messing with them. So what I did is I jumped the trolley, which came out of the tunnel, with a stack of newspapers in one arm, and held on to the back of it, and went all the way in, down the end to Jackson Square, and came back the other way. So I didn't have to mess with the guy. So that's using your head, as they say. So I learned very early in the game not only to hustle, but to think ahead, play the game, and make money. Well, at age 17, I joined the United States Army. And I thought I was going to see the world. And I thought I was going to learn a lot of things. Make a long story short, I ended up being a tank driver. 45-ton tank with a big howitzer at the end of it. And I drove that tank. I wish I could have it today on the Mass Pike. Anyway, I would like to say that when I got out of the Army, it was a Sunday. It was a week after I had gotten out. And my dad came over to me and he said, okay, you've been home a week. You'll either get a job or you'll go to college, just like your two brothers and your sister. Now, I got to tell you, school and I did not get along. Why? Because when I was about 6, I spoke total Arabic. And I went to the cathedral on Washington Street. And the nuns thought there was something wrong with me. So they put me into this speech class with kids that were handicapped, and they were trying to learn the vowels. And I'm sitting there looking at this situation and saying, there's got to be something terribly wrong with me. And therefore, school and I would be daydreaming. Mrs. Cronin would say, George, pay attention. But school and I just didn't get along. So when he's telling me to go to college, by the way, I graduated out of Brighton High School, I just didn't want to fight with him. I said, Dad, you'll either go to college or you'll get a job. Now, you didn't mess with my dad because he was a farmer in the old country, big hands, built like Arnold. So I grabbed the Sunday Globe, and this is the gospel truth. I scanned the newspaper, classified ads. Then I saw the one ad that was just made for me. It said, man with car wanted, and I qualified. I was a man, I'd just come out of the service. I drove a tank, man with car. So I said, picked up the phone, it was a Sunday, and this guy answered, and I said, I saw this ad, I understand you're looking. Yeah, kid, I want you to come to 1414 Colmouth Avenue in Brighton. Be there at 9 o'clock. Yes, sir. Do I get a chance at this job? He said, well, let me meet with you first. Okay. So you bet your bottom dollar. I drove my 1936 Pontiac 4-door to this location, got out of the car, walked in, and this was the scene. There was an electric light bulb hanging over a desk with a guy sitting behind it with a cigar in his mouth with the juice running down the side. And I said, sir, I'm here to apply for the job. Okay, kid, let me show you what the job is. You see this high chair over here? You take the chair off the table, you slide it onto a set of wheels, you make a stroller. You take the chair, you slide a set of rockers underneath it, you have a rocker. You take the carriage, you slide it on top of the table, you have a bassinet. And you ended up making 14 different, and I'm standing there looking at him juggle this thing around. And, made out of chrome and formica and naugahyde. It was for babies, mothers, okay? And I said, wow, that's great. How can I get this job? He said, okay, here's the deal, kid. You give me $75. $75 is what I was making in the Army per month. And we'll let you have the equipment, and you'll go and sell it. Well, I don't have the 75, but hold the job open. I'm really naive as hell. Hold the job open for me, and I'll be back with the $75. So I go home, and I ask my mother for $75. Oh, what do you, no, I don't have to do, don't, go and ask your father. That's my father. Hey, Pa, I need 70, I got a job, and I need 70, what do you need $75? Why do you have to pay for a job? Well, the baby, the carriage and the thing, and they need the equipment, and they give you the equipment, and I need 75. No! What? How are you going to sell this? Well, you go to the door, knock on. No son of mine is going to be a peddler. Why? Because he peddled lace and curtains up on Beacon Street in 2 black bags that he'd go from Upton Street all the way up Dartmouth Street to Beacon. And I remember when I'd go with him, he'd say to me, you never ring the front door. You always go to the side because you don't want to disturb the lady of the house. Okay, Dad. So I went back to my mother and conned her out of the 75. So the next day, I went back to the shop. There he is, sitting back there behind the desk with the scar and the juice running down. I said, here's the $75. And he said, okay, kid, here's the equipment, and here's an order pad. Yeah, and now what do I do? And I swear to you, this was the motion he gave me. He said, you go and find babies. I got you 75, get the hell out of here. Babies? Yeah, you go and find babies. Good luck. I put the equipment in the back seat of the car, and I'm sitting there saying, holy God, what did I do? Took the money from my mother. Babies. In the South End, 5 stories high, each house, row house, they had alleys in the back. And I remember as a kid when we used to play, there'd be these diapers flapping in the breeze. In those days, clothespins, no dryers. And I said, oh, babies, diapers. Drove to the South End, and to the alleys, and diapers on the 4th floor, diapers on the 2nd, one house at 3rd from the end. And I counted where all the diapers were hanging. Again, not to make a long story short, the next day I went back to 1414 Commonwealth Avenue, and Jaime was sitting there, and I walked in. I said, Jaime, I have these sales here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sales. He looked at me. He said, how the hell do you do that? I said, well, you told me to go and find babies. So I went to the South End, and I saw these diapers, and I figured that's where I'd find babies. He said, George, this is amazing. How would you like to be my sales manager? The first day on the job, when my father hears about this. I was the first guy he had hired, and he had just gotten the distributorship. So I said, okay, I'll just teach people to go to their communities and look for diapers. Easy deal. Okay. In Worcester, Massachusetts, on Route 9, there was a company called Wonder Chair. They had knocked off Strollo Chair, which is the company I represented. And they started to hire people, and they had heard about our secret plan, the diapers. And before you know it, there were more people going up and down the alleys in and around the Boston area than you could shake a stick at, all looking for diapers. This is America, the land of Spinoffville. Nothing is unique, okay? So guys would come back to the office and say, George, these people are Wonder Chair, they're on the same, looking, and they're getting there before us in some cases. I said, oh God. Record of births. They have to have the record of births when the baby is born. I said, we'll go to the town hall, Norwood, Mass, and walk up to the clerk, say, I'd like to have the record of births of last week of the babies that were born. Okay, sir, that's 2 cents a copy. Fine. I took 3x5s, and they'd hand you 30, 40 birth certificates. And you'd look at them, and you'd find out the address, the doctor's name, the baby, etc., male, female. So this was another way of getting there before the other guys were still looking at the diapers. So we took the lead, and suddenly nobody in our organization was going looking for diapers. They were going to the town halls all around Greater Boston. The competitors found out about our secret, and they began showing up at the town halls. And our guy would be writing up, and they'd be sitting there writing up. Before you know it, they were hitting the same customers in, geez, all these, wow. What do we do now? George, we can't, I can't, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Basketball smugglers, women having babies. They go to the doctor's office. They get examined. Go right to the doctor's office and say, how do you do, doctor? May I have the names of the expectant women, please? He said, what the hell are you talking about? We don't give names like, yeah, that's right. Oh, please, I'm sorry. I just, oh, okay. There was a buddy of mine, Martin Greenfield, out of New York, who at that time just started publishing this magazine that said My Baby Magazine. And I went and saw him. He had just started this magazine, maybe 7 pages. And I said, Martin, how would you like to get some real serious distribution of this magazine? He said, well, George, what do you want? Yeah. I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you'll do something for me, I will deliver this magazine to every doctor's office in New England. He said, you will? I said, yeah. What do you want? Oh, nothing great. I want you to publish a bingo card. I call it a bingo card. Every magazine has these things, as you know, right? And I want you to publish this card, only I want you to say Stork Pack with an address. And in the back, I just want the individual to fill it out. When is the baby due? What street? What's your phone number? What's your husband's name? And he said, that's all. He said, nope, no problem. So we cut a deal, and I hired women in white nurses' outfits with a rack, and they would walk into the doctor's office and say, we'd like to give you these 30 magazines free of charge. So the basketball smuggler lady would come into the office, and she'd see the magazine, and she'd open it up. Boop! There was this card. Free Stork Pack. Samples from America's leading manufacturers. Free! She'd send in the card. We'd get the card. Now we had phone room. And the person would dial, how do you do, Mrs. Jones? You sent away for this free store pack. We'd like to deliver it. What time would be convenient for you? By the way, we'd like to have your husband available since we have a film on child safety. Oh, that's wonderful. The end result is that became our lead program, and we knocked the competitor out of the box. He couldn't recover because we got there when the woman was only 3 months pregnant, and they were still looking for diapers and whatever. Thinking ahead, being in a competitive business, you got to stay ahead of the game, other you become one of the also-rans. You know that, Mr. Business One. So the factory saw these sales happening in New England, and they wanted to find out what was happening, and they found out that I was the sales manager. This is now maybe 3 or 4 years into the deal. And the factory called me up and said, would you come to New York? We'd like to talk to you. I would be then about 24 years old. The name of the chairman of the company was Mr. Berger. They were from Austria. They were chased out of Austria by the Nazis. And their factory, which was these big, beautiful perambulator carriages, those English-style, beautiful carriage, well, they came to the United States with this invention, stroller chair, and they tried selling it in Macy's, but it took at least 45 minutes to an hour to demonstrate, and nobody in those places would take that long. It was quite involved to demonstrate. So they wondered whether or not this could be sold door to door, and they were going to sell dealerships, which is where Jaime bought the franchise from them, the dealership from them, not the franchise. And they wanted me to become the national sales manager. Now, I didn't understand quite really what that meant, other than instead of just selling the program in New England, I was going to do it throughout the United States. Again, not to bore you with a lot of minutia, in a period of the next 8 years, we had over 3,000 stroller chair salespeople, people knocking on doors and making a living in the United States. I taught those people how to walk, knock, talk, and sell. Getting there before competition. Having a product that was, in those days, the carriage, the combination was outstanding, saved a lot of money. We had a unique way of closing the sale. After we made the presentation, we would say, now, folks, what we don't want to do is to come back tomorrow, because we could be somewhere else selling. So the company has devised a program to get you to make a decision tonight. And you want to know what that is? And we had this beautiful brochure of 4 cribs: maple, mahogany, birch, white. And if you place your order tonight, not tomorrow, you can have one of these cribs. Which color would you like? Qualified. Which color would you like? Now, usually, if you got them in the trance, they'd say the white. Then, of course, sometimes the husband would say, well, yeah, we'd like to think about it. Think about it. That's the last word a salesman wants to hear, to think about it. It's a nice way of saying, we're not ready to buy. So we had some beautiful information on how many children have been injured falling out of a high chair or letting the tray snap down on their fingers. Our tray slid. It was just a wonderful piece of equipment. So we'd go through the process of what this baby is going to mean to you. And the end statement that sold more baby carriages than anywhere else in the world was, "Sir, wouldn't you think that your wife deserves the best and safest equipment made in the world?" Now I ask you, sir, which decision, listen to this pitch, please, all you sales guys, which decision would give you the least cause of concern, to buy or not to buy? And the wife would be, "Well, I guess we to buy." Press hard, you have 3 carbon copies to go through. Press hard, concentrate on the order. Done. I got to tell you, that was just amazing. Then one day we got a call from the Owens Sewing Machine Company in London, England. They had heard about Strollo Chair, and they wanted to buy the exclusive rights for London. I went over there, met the man that owned the company, pitched him, sold him the rights, went to London, Japan, Central America. Now, during this period, Mr. Berger would say to me, "George, at a certain point, we're going to give you 25% of the company if you reach a certain level of sales." And boy, I got to tell you, that was a focus. I wanted that 25%. I did get a royalty on every chair that was sold. I'm not saying that didn't happen. But to own a piece of the rock, boy. And I devoted my energy going around the world, setting up dealerships, training people, walk, knock, talk, and sell. Well, I had reached a point where the sales got to where he said he thought I should own 25% of the company. Now I learned a lesson. If it isn't written, it isn't written. You're a very attractive lady. How are you? Now, I must tell you, I was shocked. I asked him, wait a minute. I'm 17 years with you, and I've devoted my entire life to making this happen with the idea that I'd own a piece of this deal. "Well, George, I'm sorry, but my daughter married somebody from Austria, and we gave him that position in the company." I said, "What?" "Yes, I'm sorry." "Sorry?" "You can take when the sun doesn't shine." I quit. I was making $375,000 a year in 1967. You multiply that. And I quit. Yes, I quit. I'm out of here. The next day I'm saying, "What the hell did I do? Oh God, geez, where am I?" No, they made a promise. They can't do that. And I'm talking to myself. And when you talk to yourself, you always like the answers you get, right? Okay. So now, sometime you entrepreneurs, male and female, when life throws a curve at you, it may not be the worst thing in the world. Sometimes it takes a clash of something to knock you off the track, and suddenly you find yourself on a new track that even is better than the other deal. That can happen, but sometimes it's a trauma. And I'm sure you sometimes have faced this in your lifetime. Have another drink. All right. Now, my lawyer said to me, "George, the hell with them. I own 3 Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises." And he says, "I know they're looking for somebody for Boston. They don't think the Yankees really like Kentucky Fried Chicken. And the territory is open. And he says, and I'm making $120 per location profit. I said, there's my money that I just lost. He says, go down to Louisville, and meet the guy that owns the company, John Y. Brown. Now, for those of you who don't know John Y. Brown, he owned the Celtics. He was the governor of Kentucky. And at that time, he was chairman of Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation, the fastest growing chicken franchise in the United States. So I flew down, met with John Y. Brown, and we're hustling each other. I'm telling him I'm the greatest thing in the world because I could take this territory and I can build it. And he's telling me, well, I don't really know if I want to give it up. Baloney. It's the reverse sell. So the more he held back, the more I... Make a long story short. By the way, I found out something about him. When he was going to college, he sold Electrolux and Encyclopedia Britannica door to door. So at some point we began schmoozing and knocking their head. We got along. I came back to Boston with a franchise agreement for 30 units for Greater Boston area. I went to a training facility. They taught me how to cook chicken. They put you in a white uniform. They show you how to cut the chicken up, how to bread it, how to put it in steaming shortening, burning yourself to death. And you had, of course, a beautiful building. Try getting a building in Lexington, Massachusetts that has a red and white striped roof, white stucco, where there's nothing but red brick. I'll never forget the day I had to go before the town fathers to get approval. And one of the aldermen said to me, Mr. Nadoff, can I have the description of that building, please? I said, well, it's red and white, roof, striped. There's a big, big picture of Colonel Saunders that lights up on a bucket that turns around, and it lights up. And he's saying, in Lexington, Massachusetts, you're going to put this... the tie of Colonel Saunders was made out of blue. The colors were red and white. He says, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to approve this for Lexington, Massachusetts. This is the place where the people like red brick and green. I said, what are you saying to me again, please, sir? You don't like the colors of what? Red, white, and blue. Sir, I want you to know something. I was in the service, and I honored the colors of red, white, and blue, and I'm offended by your concept. I got approved. Okay. Now, you got to remember, I'm a peddler. I'm a guy go out, knock on doors, press hard. You got 3 carbon, take money. The day that we were opening our first Kentucky Fried Chicken in Weymouth, Mass., Weymouth Landing, the store got built, and we put out the open sign, and I'm standing in the lobby, and I started watching people come in with cash and giving me money. I never saw anything like that in my life. People were giving me money. I had to go and steal it from them. Now I was, take a bucket of chicken, give me money. It was unbelievable. People loved fried chicken, at least then. Now, I built those units, and up to about 22 units. I had about 8 or 9 more units to go. And I suddenly realized that they sold all the territory in New England around me. I had actually ignited the area. Guys saw the concept. They saw people lining up. The territory that I owned became very small. I couldn't grow. I had a beautiful organization great guys, great people working for me. And now this situation caused some grief. So I called up John and I said, John, I've got an organization with an overhead, and if I can't build any more stores, I'm going to be in trouble. Well, George, let me see if I can do something for you. Let me get back at you. Called me back in a day or so. He said, I got your solution. How about going to Salt Lake City? I said, where? Salt? Yeah, Salt Lake, Utah. You want me to take my organization and move out to Salt Lake City? John, this is another one of those things in life that takes something like that to happen to change the course of what you do. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because something bad happens that it's bad. It may be another door that's opening. So at the time, I had a 3-year-old boy that I had adopted who was speaking total Greek. His mother was Greek. And he was this gorgeous little kid, and everything he said out of his mouth was, I'm saying, oh God, I can see what's going to happen. He's going to end up being in the same situation that I was with the nuns. It's going to be a bad situation. So I went to my next door neighbor, Arthur Altman, and I said to Arthur, you got 3 kids. I got this situation with little Georgie, and I got to get him some social interaction. And he's, George, stop. There's only one place that you need to send your kid. It's Green Acres in Waltham. It's been there for 40 years. Master degree teachers, early childhood. 22 acres. The best school in New England. Go there. In the car, drive the thing, drive into the yard, go up the stairs. Hi, I want to enroll my kid. Okay, sir, here's an application. Fill it out. Okay, sir. Okay. When can he come? I'm sorry, there's a 3-year waiting list. I said, no, you don't understand. He's 3 years now. He's not speaking English. I gotta. He's very small. You can slide him in. Nobody would see him. Well, I'm very sorry, sir. We have rules and regulations. A lot of people on this list, and they were here before you. Okay, thank you. So I get in my car, I sit there for about 15, 20 minutes, and I said, wait a minute. Newton, Wellesley, Needham, you mean to tell me there aren't schools like that? So I drove the immediate area, and I saw church basements where you wouldn't put your dog. I saw family daycare, nursery schools, where the filthiest things you ever saw in your life. And mind you, I just saw the best thing I ever saw in my life, Green Acres. And I'm looking at these places you wouldn't put your kid in. And I'm getting angry. Persistence and perseverance. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. I'm going back to that school, Green Acres. Go back to the registrar. I'd like to speak to the owner. She's sleeping. Well, I'll wait. Okay. Finally, after 2.5 hours, Grace Mitchell, Dr. Grace Mitchell, comes down the steps, and she walks over to the registrar. She says, who's that man? She says, he is very persistent. He reminds me of your son, Lee. F. Lee Bailey was her son, the attorney. And he's very persistent. She goes, really? She looked over at me. She came over, beautiful white hair, maybe about 70. She said, may I help you? Well, Dr. Mitchell, my child did speak Greek, and I need somewhere to, she said, look, I'm truly very sorry, but we have to honor our list. Well, can I ask you a question, Mrs. Mitchell? If I build a school, will you work with me to teach the programs that you have been using here for 40 years? She says, you want to open up? What's your background? I said, but I know I can open up, and I would like you to help me. She says, George, I'm really quite busy. Okay, turn the clock, make it move faster, here we go. I found a building on Main Street in Worcester, 764 Main Street. It was a former nurses training school. Ivy on the buildings, big gate, courtyard, built in 1878. And I got a hold of the building inspector, and I said, look, I'm thinking of opening up a school, nursery school. That's what it was called then, not daycare. 3-hour programs, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, well, let me take a look at that old ark. There's going to be a lot of work that you're going to have to do to get this ready for a nursery school. So he came in, he said, you've got to wire the doors, electric plumbing, heating, just went all. And I said, now, if I do this, you'll give me a permit? He said, absolutely. That night, around 7 o'clock, I called up Grace, and I said, Dr. Mitchell, I want you to come right now. I'll pick you up, and I want you to look at this business. She says, George, it's 7 o'clock. I said, yeah, but I'll make it quick, I promise. Persistence, perseverance. I was a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. So I pick her up, and I bring her down to this facility, and it's kind of light out still, but she said, George, this has been here for years. You'll never get this approved. Now, she didn't know that I had already checked it out with the building. I said, well, if I can get it approved, would you consider going along with me on this? She said, you're very persistent. Later on, she wrote a book about me, a chapter about me in her book, and she described me as one of those big dolls that have the weight on the bottom. You punch it and it comes back. And I won't bore you because this was quite a long story, and since I only have a short time left, I want to move into other things, but let me tell you what happened. We took and made that school everything that the inspector wanted, and we took the 157 people that were on a waiting list and put them in the school. And we had a school fully enrolled right from the get-go. Unbelievable. And of course, the PR on this, that Grace Mitchell opens her second school. I can, that was her philosophy. The education, first daycare in the United States that had educational daycare. All the other companies were custodial. We just didn't cut out a balloon, put a hole in it, and send the kid home with it. There was a real curriculum. Unbelievable. That was eventually published, and most of the daycare chains in the country today use that as the Bible. At one point, and this is something that all you entrepreneurs have to listen to. When you start a business and you take investments from people to help you launch your business, you have an obligation to get them the best return humanly possible. Do not fall in love with your business. That's going to hurt a little bit when I say that, because all you want to do is fall in love with your business. Fall in love with your wife, because the day will come when somebody will make an offer to your business, and your shareholders, your board of directors, are going to probably make the decision to take the offer. You can't do that with your wife. You can't sell your wife. So fall in love with her, that's okay, but don't fall in love with your business. Don't worry about equity. Equity that doesn't turn into something is nothing. It's only when equity, whether it's 10, 15, 20, 30% that you own when you started at 100. Forget about it. Don't get married to, I don't want to give up the equity. Doesn't work, guys. If there's an opportunity that comes along, the price is right, you took money from people to invest, you make the decision. Some lesson there for you to think about. Now, the company was then sold to KinderCare, the largest provider in the United States that was doing custodial daycare in this country. Now, I did not want to stay on with the company because I don't want to work for anybody. Because in the Army, when the sergeant tells you to do something, you do it. And I hated him because I didn't want to do what he wanted me to do. And we all have ego. There's no greater drive in human existence than ego gratification, unless it becomes Hitler. Show me a person without ego, and I'll show you someone that isn't going to go anywhere unless it's positive ego. So ego is not bad. Don't let it get crazy. That's the truth. You need to feel good. You need to have feelings about what you're doing. All right. I sold the company. I think I was about 41, 42, 48. I went out to California to visit a couple of buddies of mine. And while I was there, I picked up the Los Angeles Times, and I saw a page of real estate with a logo of a company called UBI, United Business Investments. It was brokers selling restaurants, and they had 44 locations. And I said, my God, somebody is franchising business brokerage. Ooh, I found out where the headquarters were, Paramount, California. I drove down there and said, I'd like to speak to the owner, please. And they said, well, he's in his office. Well, would you tell him that someone from Massachusetts would just like to have a chat with him? So I walk in there, and he's taking things out of his drawers. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I just sold the company. Oh, you just sold the company? Yeah, he said, H&R Block just bought it. They want to sell insurance services and one other service, bookkeeping services, along with selling a business. And they loved my concept. I said, did you franchise? No, they were all company owned and operated. I said, really? I said, where are you going to go from here? God always points the way. He says, well, my wife is from Concord, Massachusetts. I said, yes. He says, and we want to go back to Concord, Massachusetts. What are you going to do there? I haven't figured it out yet. So I said to him, you know, Tom, I think business brokerage can be franchised. You had 44 offices. You had to have a formula. You had to have a training system. You had to have the method of doing this. Yeah, he said, I'm doing it for 22 years. How would you like to become my partner? And we'll form a company when you get back to Massachusetts called VR Business Brokers. And we'll franchise. He said, well, I'd have to think about it and talk to my wife. Next day he called me up and he said, you got a deal. In 3.5 years, we had 375 offices opened worldwide, selling and listing businesses. Again, walk, knock, talk, and sell. What was the routine? You'd hire a commissioned salesman, just like real estate, and you teach him to go down the street and speak to an owner of a business. Hi, sir, are you the owner of this business? I may have a buyer for this business. Is this of any interest to you, sir?
Yes.
Ha ha! The answer always came back, yes, most cases. So here we were again, door to door, store to store, home to home, walk, knock, talk, and sell, a system, a method. So we had over, I think, 2,700 brokers walking down Main Street asking small business, do you want to sell? We have a buyer for your business. Okay. We got so big that, and I'm sure I'll find it, each Thursday we would take the full page of the Wall Street Journal, and we would list businesses from all over the country with the statement, what business of this is yours? And on the bottom of this, it asked, if you want to buy a franchise, contact us. Why not? We had 50,000 buyers calling us, and we didn't have enough product. Can you imagine being in a business where people wanted what you had and you didn't have enough of it? Think of that! So VR was the main name in business brokerage. We sold businesses averaging between $250 to $280 or $300,000. We were the largest seller of small businesses in the United States. Tom never had it so good in his life. We eventually sold that company to Christie & Co. out of England. And they took over the company, and off they went. Before I sold the company, our franchisees would say to me, George, we don't have enough product. People are coming in to buy, and we don't have enough inventory. Well, you can't make more inventory. You can't create more. But in the Wall Street Journal, every Thursday, there was this section called the Mart, M-A-R-T. An ad in the Wall Street Journal in those days was $4,500 for a 3x4 ad. And the page was loaded with franchisors looking for franchisees, looking for buyers. And who had more buyers than anybody else calling them in the United States? Thank you, my friend. So I decided to pick up the phone and began calling these franchisors that were running these ads. And I simply said to them, stop spending the money. I will deliver to you a buyer. You don't pay me until you sign them up. Tell me where you want the sale, anywhere in the country, I will get you the coverage. So overnight, we ended up with 48 different franchise companies that joined franchise headquarters. We became the largest seller of other people's franchises in the world. So again, what am I saying to you? Don't let a negative thing disturb the positiveness that could happen as a result of cutting a deal. Just have faith in yourself. Now, because of the time that I have here, I normally have a bunch of proverbs that I repeat, or stories that I repeat. But I got a couple of real juicy ones, and I want to give them to you. First of all, I have a great-great-great-grandfather. You can't see this in the back, folks, but he's here with a turban on his head. He lived to be 115 years old in Lebanon. 115 years. His name was Thanus Karam. And my Uncle Rene would show me this article. It was written in Arabic originally. And he would tell me the story of Thanus Karam. The French owned Lebanon in those days. And the French colonel heard about this guy. 115 years old. I got to meet this guy, the colonel said. So they arranged this meeting, and they had a couple of people that could transfer the languages. And the colonel would ask the old man the following: "Sir," in French, "to what do you owe your longevity to?" The old man pondered. He said, "Well, first of all, I am the enemy of the vine," which means he didn't drink. Second, and very important, I've never stressed my vitals. He never put himself under stress. And third, and most important of all, I've kept women at a respectable distance. At that rate, I should be kicking the bucket next week. In any event, attitude. We wake up every day with attitude. Sometimes you have a tough night, you have a fight, you have things on your mind. You start the day off in a negative. Attitude, by God, is the best damn thing that an entrepreneur has to have. Because you can't go out and sell anything when you have a bad attitude. I have a very favorite article on attitude. And I know the light is kind of dark, so I hope I can see the words here. But here's the word. Attitude. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. So it is with you. We are in charge of our attitude. Now, how many times, I want a show of hands, have you been angry at some point at someone? Let me see a show of hands. God bless you. All right. This is beautiful. Are you ready? Yes! Oh, no, please, keep it down, keep it down. All right. Holding a grudge is letting someone live rent-free in your head. I'm going to repeat that. Holding a grudge is letting someone live rent-free in your head. So think about that the next time you get yourself worked up. Don't rent space in your head. Now, my wife, Marty, the love of my life. Incidentally, by the way, my daughter Jessica is here this evening, and I want you all to make her feel good because she is the end result of 32 billion years of evolution. Jessie, would you please stand up? There she is. I love her. I love my daughter. She is something else. God bless her. All right. My wife calls me up one day. I'm at the office in Newtonville. George, when you come home tonight, I want you to go to this place and pick up some rotisserie chicken. It's right around the corner from your office. And be sure to get a whole bird quartered. And be sure to pick up some steamed vegetables. And definitely get the cornbread. I said, honey, my Kentucky Fried Chicken store is 2 blocks. I don't want any of that fried stuff. 1988. Fried is bad? What happened to the Colonel? Oh, jeez. Honey, come on, let me just pick up the bucket. And George, please. All right, no problem. I'll go. So I go around the corner on Austin Street, and there's this long line out the door. Now, you got to be careful about being an entrepreneur and getting into long lines, because sometimes you'll get into a soup line, and that's not what you want to do. But this line was made up primarily of women. The same women that sent their kids to Living and Learning School, Mulberry Child Care Centers, Sylvan. They were looking for a meal, because now women were going back to work. They needed a good meal to take home and put on china. And healthy, steamed vegetables, spinach, cream. I mean, it was. So I get into this line, and I'm waiting to get in. Finally, I get into the store, and up front is this rotisserie chicken. The flames licking away on the marinade. The smell was like an aphrodisiac. Oh, and then I look at the steamed vegetables. Oh my God, look at those steamed vegetables. Wow. And there's 2 guys behind the counter, and they're like octopuses, taking care of the orders and moving. And I'm coming from Kentucky Fried Chicken, this is like, whoa! Rotisserie. Wow. Visual. You don't see this stuff being fried, no, but rotisserie. So I walk up, finally it's my turn. 2 guys working behind the counter. And I said, hey, fellas, you should franchise this. And they said, everybody says that. I said, well, you really have something here, you know, and I'd like to give you my card. Just keep in the back of your mind. Okay. So for the next 3 months, I was there every night, looking at the cash register, $13.75 per ring up compared to $3.75 at Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I'm going crazy. I can't sleep at night. My wife says to me, all right, George, the routine, go to the next bedroom. I'm not going to stay awake with you tonight. That was our deal. Okay? Twisting and turning. This thing could be franchised. I don't know what the hell I can. Oh, I can't believe it. Look at steamed vegetables. It's great to talk to yourself. It's amazing. Anyway, so I finally go back one day, and I said to them, can I invite you guys over for a game of pool? Do you shoot pool? Yeah. Will you come over to the house? You won't be so busy. We can chat. Okay. So they come over to the house. We're shooting pool. And I said, can I ask you a question? Why are you reluctant to cut a deal with me? We think you're here to steal our marinade. I said, I'm not here to steal your marinade. You've got a concept. You've got people with a long line waiting for your food. I mean, you guys should understand that you've got something that's timely. Well, What happens if you buy the company from us and the business goes bad? What happens to our store? That's a good question to ask, isn't it? And I said, is that the only reason? Find the objection. Yeah. Get the objection out. You're not going to sell anything until you get it out. It's a stepping stone across a brook. You got to step on it to get to the other side. Listen to the objection. Is that your only problem? Qualifying close. If I solve that problem, sir, would you both consider working a deal with me? What do you mean? How are you going to solve it? I'm going to let you keep your own store. I allowed him to keep his own store. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, Boston Chicken was born. And I must tell you, you remember the story, don't you? You got to hear this woman's story. She is something else. She's from Connecticut, and she is a smart lady. How you doing? Great. Nice to see you. It was the equivalent of putting a match to lighter fluid as a franchise. The timing was right. Women were going back to work. The meal was perfect for a family of 4. And we sold area licenses. It was just amazing. We had about 78 units roughly opened and over 200 some odd sold. And one day, this group of guys comes from Blockbuster Video. And sales were beginning to go down because of Netflix and all that stuff. It was early on. But they were looking for something that they could take their organization, worldwide practically, and put something else in place of it. And they came in, there were 5 of them, pretending that they wanted to buy a 5-state region, Chicago, in that area there. And someone wants to buy 5 states. I can't tell you how much money that would mean. So obviously I'm hosting them, we're talking, we're showing numbers, disclosure documents and everything. And they kept on drawing it out. For some reason, they just didn't want to close. Well, I found out through the grapevine that they were looking at another concept called Miami Subs in Florida. And they were torn between Boston Chicken and Miami Subs. And I got upset that they were dragging it out. I had a business to run. And I finally called up the head guy and I said, Scott, the deal's off. We're not talking anymore. What do you mean? I said, look, you guys got other things on your plate. I've got a business to run. See you later. You didn't think that took a lot of guts when I thought there was 5 states involved. But at some point, Fisher cut bait. To thy own self be true. Now, the next day he flies up in his own plane and we cut a deal. It happened. That turned out to be the highest IPO in a one-day deal in the history of the United States. You may now give me an applause. The highest IPO. It went from 14 to 57 in one day, 143%. It was insanity. People calling up, oh, go, geez. And I was in New York at the time visiting an investment banking firm on another deal that I was looking at. And the broker came running up to me and said, George, Boston Market just went public, and Boston Chicken just went public. I said, I knew it was going to go. I didn't know. I said, what was the deal? He said, the deal was the percentage. I said, oh, well, wait a minute. How much? 40, 57? But of course, why not? The highest deal ever I mean, I like to brag about it. My father, if he was still alive, would say to me, "How you do that?" How you do that, George? Okay. It is now close to 20 minutes of 9. People say to me, "You're 84 years old. What are you going to do?" My buddy over here was looking at one of the companies that I was fooling around with, and they did an incredible job, I must say. If you need marketing, this is the guy to go see, and his partner, Nate.
Thank you, George.
All right, buddy. I want to ask a question. Please raise your hands. How many people in this room know somebody that has a child that has autism? May I see a show of hands, please? Wow. Wow. Okay. I have a daughter who also I had adopted at the time that has a 12-year-old child that has autism. And for those of you who really know someone that has autism, it's a plague on the family. 50% of autism families get divorced. The trauma involved with having an autistic child, and you must know this, I'm sure, if you've known families that have had this situation. I don't know if I told you this in order to spare time, but I was the founder of Sylvan Learning Centers. Sylvan Learning Centers were remedial reading and remedial math in a facility in a medical building, 1,500 square feet. There are now 900 of them worldwide. I was the founder of that company. Thank you. Thank you. And it was franchised. And the curriculum worked. Parents loved it. And it was after-school program starting at 2:30 in the afternoon. My daughter's doctor, Dr. Howard Shane, foremost authority on autism in America, was treating her child. And he heard that I had done Sylvan Learning Centers. And he asked to meet with me. And we had a session. He said, "George, I have a curriculum that we use here at Children's Hospital, where people come from all over the world with their kids to get the treatment from us. Could I convince you to do exactly what you did with Sylvan Learning Centers? Could you do that same format with my program?" I had thought that I wanted to kind of retire. I would go nuts if I retired. I know I can't handle. My wife was down the Cape for 3 months, and she made me stay there for 2 months. I was ready to jump in the ocean and drown myself. I must tell you, this thing has to keep working, otherwise you end up being brittle and not seeing the dream. And I don't want to be brittle. I want to dream. I want to have challenges. I want to wake up every day feeling that I'm doing something. And why not with autism? So I want you all to know that I'm working with Dr. Shane to deliver autism not only in the United States, but to the Middle East, where the rate over there is twice as high than in America, because they all marry their cousins. And it turns out that the end result is autism. So I'm back in the game. I'm going to do this for the next, as long as God allows me to stay healthy, and I get 2 beautiful kids, both my daughter Jessie and Paul, who are my shining lights. I'm going to close now with something I want you to take away with you tonight. It's a poem. throw a stone into water. Watch it sink. You know the water it displaces has to find somewhere to go. The moving rock is master. It dominates the show. And now the rock lies motionless on the river's bed, and the sea-bound swirling water rush swiftly overhead and wear away the rock until its substance all has fled. So mark you well the moral. Be on top and be the person in motion, and you'll always make the buck. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. Thank you. Huh?
Want to do some Q&A?
Yes.